Attention. Forward, arms. Forward, march. And salute. Present, arms.
Good morning. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow veterans and honored guests, on behalf of the officers and members of the Joseph East Local Post American Legion 1520, I would like to welcome you to the 75th Pearl Harbor anniversary.
As President Roosevelt prayed with the nation that day, we pray today, asking God to lead us to the saving of our country and with our sister nations into a world unity that will spell a sure peace, a peace invulnerable to the schemings of unworthy men, a peace that will let all men live in freedom.
For those who have served and currently serving in the uniformed services of the United States are ever mindful that the sweetness of enduring peace has always been tainted by the bitterness of personal sacrifice. We are compelled to never forget that while we enjoy our daily pleasures, there are others who have endured and may still be enduring the agonies of pain, deprivation, and imprisonment. Before we begin our celebration today, we pause to recognize our POWs and MIAs. We call your attention to the small table which occupies a place of dignity and honor. It is set for one, symbolizing the fact that members of our armed forces are missing from our ranks.
When I come to this event year after year, that sense of gratitude is overwhelming because I look out in this room and I see men and women who served in World War II and in wars thereafter, and I know that I'm standing here today because of your service, your sacrifice, the selflessness that you have demonstrated on behalf of your fellow Americans. And for that, I and every American am deeply, deeply grateful.
And I think about so many different things. I'm sure everyone in the crowd thinks about so many different things. First and foremost, the call to remember. Because if we don't remember, then we risk having that happen again. We risk not paying homage to the lives that were lost that day. We risk not recognizing the sacrifice of so many families who lost loved ones on that day and who lost loved ones in World War II. I think about, too, the heroes who fought that day and who fought throughout World War II.
I like to think about this day and think about the sacrifice of them sailors. To think about the sacrifice of every person, man and woman, have laid their lives down on their life for this country. And out of all the wars since World War II, it's like 1.1 million soldiers went off to defend this country and never came home. To the Gold Star mothers that are here, your children are gone but not forgotten. And there's many stories of people they saved and people are out there lived their life, quality of life, had changed other people's lives that you'll never hear about, but you will again when you meet up with your son or daughter. To me, today, I remember my grandfather, my great uncle who served in the Navy during World War II, and all the servicemen and women. We cannot forget. We cannot forget what happened that day. We cannot forget how that world was changed on December 7th. I want to thank every veteran that is here today who has served, and every veteran that's serving today, because out of a population of 330 million Americans, less than 1% wear that uniform today. And we've been at war for 15 years, the longest war in the history of this country. Not to the magnitude of World War II, but been fighting. And most people live an ordinary life. And they don't take the time to step back and thank veterans.
It's really important to hear the words that were said here this morning And that when we grew up, we did learn about Pearl Harbor, about World War II. Our history has taught us so much. And everybody in this room counts their blessings each day that we live in the greatest country in the world. And we can't ever give up hope. We can't ever give up our freedoms. We continue to pray for peace in this ever-changing world. But we do live in the greatest country in this entire world, and we can't ever forget that. So as we count our blessings, as we thank all those who have sacrificed for us that came before us and continue to sacrifice each day around the world to protect us, we really have to prioritize and teach our youth what we know.
On behalf of Congressman, Tonko, thank you for the opportunity to join you this morning. If the Congressman were here, he would express his gratitude to the organizers of this event, the Zaloga Post, the Willis family, BJ and others, and the staff of the Post for taking the time to allow us to memorialize the sacrifice of those we lost on December 7th. 1941. The Congressman values deeply these rituals. They allow us to remember the nature and the value of the sacrifice of so many servicemen and women who served in uniform. The nature, as Jerry Perry described, sometimes being very bitter and sometimes being an ultimate sacrifice, and the value being the preservation of our way of life and our system of government, our way of life being the freedoms we enjoy and the peace we take for granted, and the system of government that allows us to make change peacefully, to preserve justice and to preserve security of the people of this country. These rituals also allow us to remind us to be vigilant of the need to work hard to preserve these values and these systems of government.
I just thank you for allowing us this opportunity to sit, reflect, and remember, because I do believe that is the most important thing that we can do. And that is to reflect and remember. I am, and try to remember the lessons of history. It is wonderful. It's always gratifying to me to see young people here, our students here, so that we can all remember and continue to teach these very profound lessons. And it is because of remembrances like this that allow us that time to reflect. And it is important that we never forget.
And thank you to the Zaloga Post, and thank you to obviously our World War II veterans, but all veterans for being here today. You know, this morning as we were drinking our coffee, watching TV, or working out on the treadmill, watching the news this morning, you know, the newscasts were continuing to play the words of our president at the time of that tragic day. And my personal thought was, wow, what a terrible tragedy, something that we're here today remembering. And at the same token, unfortunately in life, it's tragedy that usually brings us together as a country. And it's unfortunate, it's a path that we have to follow for some reason. And as an American, we sometimes take for granted all that we have, the freedoms that we enjoy. Both myself and Pat have the pleasure of welcoming many international visitors to our state capitol. And time after time after time, when people come in to visit, we hear about their way of life. It's a life of oppression. It's not a life of freedom. The individuals who lost their lives on Pearl Harbor Day, December 7th, 1941, the individuals who from that point on have sacrificed their lives, either through the ultimate sacrifice or separation from family and friends, have fought for our freedoms. Freedoms that maybe even our generations, maybe the generations that follow from time to time, take for granted. But the reality is, it's remembrances like this, it's remembrance such as this ceremony that was held prior for our POW and MIA, that remind me as an American that we do live in the greatest country, and that is, in spite of sometimes our differences with individuals, We as Americans need to respect each other. We need to love each other, and we need to live as one unified country.